Hello, welcome to Taxpayer Alert. I'm Al Segalla. I'll be your moderator. I'm also president of the Calaveras County Taxpayer Association, and our dues are only $12 a year, so you can join. Our guest this session is Merita Callaway, Supervisor Merita Callaway, who was a former supervisor for many years. So we go back a long history, and Merita is very energetic. And she communicates well. You're going to enjoy this. Merita, welcome.
Thank you, Al.
All right, Merita.
What are we going to duke out now?
What's it like being supervisor again?
It's wonderful. I'm spending a lot of time meeting with departments and agencies. What's happening, getting caught up, what are their issues, what do they expect from the board, how would they like me to interact with their staff? So, yeah, it's fun being back on campus.
When you were here before, you really enjoyed yourself then, too.
I did.
Now, one of the things that I want to talk about is fees and taxes.
What a surprise.
Well, the Taxpayer Association, we can't help ourselves.
Does your $12 a year have an escalation factor?
No, we might lose membership if we went. Howard Jarvis charges $15, so we wanted to keep underhand. So fees are for government service, and taxes are for a general service. Is that
correct?
Okay.
Fees are for the service rendered. A building permit fee, a burn permit fee. I don't think we have them, but so you pay a fee to an agency for a service rendered for what you need.
Okay.
The fee cannot be profit making. The city or county has to do a nexus study to determine what that fee is.
I see. Is services best provided by government or by the private sector?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So
depends
some services.
On some services.
Okay.
I think services that provide something to the overall well-being of a community are best done by government.
Okay.
And such as roads, environmental protection, and some of the social services programs. Doesn't mean, like in Calaveras, we're very fortunate we have a lot of nonprofits that help. Right. But you have something like child protective services, adult protective services, that falls under what legally can be done, not done. That's best served by government.
I see. One of the things that at one time that there was a desire to expand government to actually run railroads and to own airlines and do a lot more, which some consider infrastructure, but that effort didn't seem to fly very well.
No, it did not.
Though we do have Amtrak.
Yeah,
which is
and Amtrak's a good. I've used Amtrak to go into the city.
I don't know its numbers, but I rode an Amtrak and I was happy with the experience.
Yeah.
So government is not
for a government. That's not bad, huh?
It's not. Government is not evil.
No, it's not.
But it can be when you look at the history of man, and you look at the history of the world. Just in the last 100 years, government's done some horrible, horrible things.
Yeah. And is that government, or is that the individuals that run the government?
Well, that's a good question. The government's a tool for evil people.
And it's also a tool for good people.
For good people.
Yes.
That's good. A good point. Now, one of the things that's happening now, and it's affecting, you had an experience yourself, is a federal shutdown, or partial shutdown, I think it's called. And you had a complaint on the federal highway. Tell us about that.
All right. The U.S. Forest Service which is in the Ebbets Pass corridor. Or they're on furlough. So I wanted to meet with the district ranger, and I can't. He's on furlough. Today, Thursday, it's pouring rain, and I got a call from a homeowners association talking about a road that's flooding. The culvert's filled. It's flooding over the road, and could we help? The road is is federal. It is not a county road.
Right.
So we did go out and take a look. There's no damage to the underpinnings of the road, so we did give the homeowners association options. But this is the kind of thing the homeowners association would have called the Forest Service and said, "You're federal government. Your culvert is full. It's flooding on the road. Could you come take care of it?" So that's, in essence, and how the shutdown just today impacts at least District 3 and the homeowners association. Yeah.
I think there was an issue for the Board of Supervisors regarding the Bureau of Land Management.
Yeah.
And it's on trees that were falling on public right-of-way that was a prescriptive easement over lands that are claimed by the federal government.
Right.
And
I thought that was real interesting, and I was proud of Supervisor Garamendi, because I believe it was in his district, for bringing that to the board. The BLM, for whatever reason, we're not going to pay to take these trees down.
Yeah.
And so, but they had to come down. It would have impacted public safety.
Right.
And the fact that the county said, we're going to step up and do it and not get into, well, it's your responsibility. No, we're not going to do it. It's your responsibility. Let's just do it.
Right.
And those are the kinds of things that government and local government has to do. We had to step up or go into a long pissing match. Can I say that on community TV?
You should have bleeped it. Well, that's okay.
I was.
They've already forgotten about it.
I thought it was appropriate, the action that we took.
I wonder, that could be a door that would open to question the purpose of the BLM. We seem to have a process without purpose. The BLM is holding land. They say they're managing land. Apparently they're not managing it because they're not managing the trees that are falling down. And so does it make sense for the federal government or the Congressional Budget Office to just do a study on the lands that are being held by the federal government that don't have purpose?
I don't know why it wouldn't. It's still public land. And that means public land. It's open to the public to use. So you can take that public land and you could give it to a county, in this case, Calaveras County. So then it's going to be upon the taxpayers of Calaveras County to manage that public land. Turn it into a park. I mean, that's nice, but then you're just shifting the fund for managing it from one government agency to another one. And is that where we want to spend the money?
Well, I think the federal government would turn the land over to the states or the people. If it goes to the people, it'd be put out to bid. And it'll be put in parcels.
Private?
Yeah, private ownership.
That's a discussion for another day. I'm not too sure I want to take public lands out of the public arena, whether it's federal, state, or local, and put it into private lands, because we've already lost a lot of public land to the private sector. And on my way over here, they were talking, I was listening to the radio talking about the loss of agricultural land, and that families are going into conservation easements. Now, you could argue whether that's good or bad, but families are not, the next generation isn't willing to farm or ranch, but they want to keep the land open, so conservation easements are being put on the land.
We had that in Lake Tulloch, I think, a large amount of land was went through. I think it went into Wansmac,
Yeah.
and then it was going to be sold to I forget the name of it. It's an outfit that holds land to keep it in a agricultural state, but the present owner would continue to use it,
Correct.
and run his own cattle on it.
That's correct.
Plus, you get the money from selling it.
Correct. And we've had that in the county
Yeah.
over the years. And the county, I'm assuming they still do, to its credit, still support the Williamson Act, even though there's no subvention funding to the county.
Right.
It helps the ranching family or the farm families stay in agriculture. And that is an economic engine of Calaveras County that we don't talk about.
Well, we should
that
talk
I
about
think
it.
I totally agree with you.
Most people agree. Well, I don't know. Most people agree. Some people seem to think that it's not good for people to get special privilege from government. In other words, have a special tax break because they feel they're more important than other people, and or their products are more important than other people's products, or they sometimes even want to have a subsidy from the taxpayer to help them. And this is not just...
So you don't support a farm subsidy?
I don't support a farm subsidy. I also don't support the Winston Act. I think there's things that could be done besides the process. It's a 10-year contract.
Correct.
It makes it very expensive to change the use of that property at the end of 10 years because you have to pay back the savings that you...
I don't think that's true. In the Williamson Act, it goes for 10 years unless you have a super Williamson Act contract. And at the end of 10 years, you can take that property and rezone it or do something else with it. It's only good for that 10 years. If you want to do something in year 5 or 6, then you have to go back, like you mentioned. But if you say, okay, I want to subdivide this property, you can do that at the end of the 10 years when your contract's up.
If you're correct...
I am correct, Al.
No, I'm not saying that you're not always correct. But it's not as bad as I thought that it would. At the end of 10 years, if you wanted to change its use, you're going to have a problem.
Your contract's up for renewal.
Okay.
Unless you do a super one. I think I'm going back from memory, but I think a super one's 20 years.
Oh, okay.
Because that's what you choose to do. I mean, it's like we have a lot of discussion. The board approves conservation easements on property.
Right.
And you can do a conservation easement for the life that goes with the land.
Right.
So it's constantly in a conservation easement.
Right.
So
How
do you tie up the land for future generations? Those are the discussions we've had.
How can you, if it is desirable to remove a property from conservation easement, is there a process to do that?
I'm sure there is, but I don't remember what it is.
Okay, it's probably something legislative or...
I don't know.
All right. Now, the next thing, you got board members that don't always agree with each other.
Yes.
I've noticed that's been a reoccurring thing for 20 years.
Absolutely.
And now you have some thoughts about working together. And what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I've worked with some very interesting supervisors over the years. We've had contentious issues. It's never been personal. It's always been respectful.
Yeah.
And there's been some fairly creative, colorful supervisors over the years. And I think this board's going to work well together. I'm feeling positive about it. I mean, Gary Tuffanelli and I've worked together. We don't agree, but we're still friends. And
plus, you got a sense of humor.
And we have a sense of humor. And I think that's important.
Yeah.
But I think the board establishes the demeanor of staff and the
Right.
public. And if we are rude or disingenuous to each other, then that rings out. But if we're respectful and we listen and we discuss an issue in a respectful manner,
Right.
I think that will permeate the rest of government center.
Well, that'd be a good thing and a blessing for the taxpayer. That means you won't be wasting our money. Well, maybe that's not necessarily true.
I won't waste your money, guaranteed.
Well, one of the things that is a serious thing with has to do with CalPERS. This is an unfunded liability.
Correct.
The county auditor has brought to attention supervisors several times.
Yes.
What are the solutions that you see, if any?
Well, the solutions have to be long-term.
Right.
And that means that we have to make that a commitment every year to at least fund what the current year is,
Right.
and hopefully, if we have revenue, to fund, because it's a revenue issue, to pay down on CalPERS. The future. I mean, we're not the only city or county, but I think we've been able to budget enough that we've kept our head, above water on that issue.
Right.
And so I don't have a quick and easy answer for how to deal with it, but, do we go into debt and pay it down? Because then you have the debt payment. I know we've restructured debt in the past, to pay it down, and we get a lower interest rate. But I'm very reluctant always to go into debt. I mean, there is some because you borrow money to pay as revenue comes in, and then you pay it back, and that's.
What about the possibility of getting out of CalPERS and setting up a plan that would be under the control of the retirees and employees that would not have political aspects to it?
That still means an investment. And Calaveras' part, we have an investment pool for not only our funds, but CCWD and the schools and special districts. And Barbara Sullivan, our treasurer, invests that money and gets a return. So then you're going to set up, I'm not saying no, I'm just saying you then set up another layer. And so if it's managed by the employees and whomever you mentioned, or retirees, then what do? I mean, does the county then give them the money, and then now they have to pay retirees, and now they have to hire an investment pool? The pool is smaller, where like the county investment pool has many of the agencies in Calaveras part of the investment pool.
Right.
So you get a little better return when you're dealing with a bigger pot of money and investments, as you well know, than an individual does.
Okay, so that question still is a maybe. If it makes sense.
I'm wondering, would the retirees want that? Would they want that responsibility to manage that money? And then who pays down the unfunded liability? Do the retirees and the special group? Or does it still rest with the county of Calaveras or the city of Angels or whomever it might be?
I understand some jurisdictions that have just couldn't afford to pay it or claiming bankruptcy.
Oh, I take your word for it. And hopefully, I don't like to think that's going to happen to Calaveras.
Well, that would hurt the retirees.
Yes.
Yeah, and so we want to have a system, or the taxpayers think we should promote a system that's fair, but also is soundly managed. And there's indication that CalPERS is not. Their method of accounting, they use a projected return that's not realistic, but because it shows a higher amount of money coming in, which is not really coming in, then the districts counties and in cities don't have to come up with an unfunded liability because of this artificial figure they use. Mm-hmm. But when the real figure comes in, then they're caught with it. Then they have to come up with the money that they didn't anticipate. It's kind of like almost like a Ponzi scheme, and so for the long term, it'd be better to have a more honest system that would protect the employees and the retirees.
Well, on the PERS board, there are retirees on the PERS board.
Right.
They're elected by the PERS retirees to have representation on the PERS board. So is it that you work through their board? I mean, in Calaveras, you work through the Board of Supervisors to get something done or not, from your perspective. So there are people on the PERS board who are retirees. So,
okay. The auditor answered the question that we would have to come up with a tremendous amount of money because CalPERS wants to be paid cash up front to get
understand, but they've been saying that for years. And cities and counties, people under the PERS system, know that. And if cities and counties don't have any kind of revenue base, then they cannot pay down on their unfunded liabilities.
The last board meeting I thought was really positive in that you're setting up study sessions on a whole list of topics that are all important. And there might be more than 10 of them. There might be 15 or 20. And I thought that was really a good idea.
I did too.
Because you have the time to focus on one thing without
feeling you have to take action.
Yeah. Right. And so we're going to get more wisdom, maybe. Now, one of the things that was going to be discussed was priority-based budgeting.
Yes.
And that's going to be a hard one because people have different ideas of what's more valuable government functions.
Well, I'd like to go into it on what the auditor, I know what she's saying. And I've always thought, gee, can we do a 2, 3, 4-year budget, projection budget? I've always kind of liked that. The downside of that is we as a county, we're not unique, do not know what the revenues will be coming in from the state and the federal government, which has a significant impact on the county's budget every year.
And priorities.
And priorities. And then, of course, there's the general fund portion, which is funded pretty much by the taxpayers of Calaveras, but not all. Some of it's grant funding, which
sales tax.
It can be sales tax, transit occupancy tax. There's other incomes that come in, and then you have the departments that are funded by the state of California, which are pretty much like your social services department. Yet that roads are funded by the state, not by the taxpayers of Calaveras. So if that's the case, and you say, well, priority-based budgeting, roads are really important, but I don't know what the money is going to be coming in for roads for that next year.
You have county roads, state roads, federal roads.
But I'm talking about county roads. Okay. County roads are funded predominantly from the state of California.
Okay.
A small amount comes from the county's general fund.
Okay.
Snow removal comes from the state of California. And somebody who has most of the snow...
You're in the snow.
I'm in the snow. What happens, which has happened, when we haven't received enough revenue to cover snow removal for a season. So, we look for easy answers, but there's public financing is a quagmire, and it isn't easy to understand.
Yeah, I know that.
Transportation funding, that comes from the state, does not come from the taxpayers of Calaveras. That comes from the taxpayers of the state of California.
The taxpayers have a hard time understanding the budget.
And so do county supervisors.
Now, we've got about 5 minutes. Let's touch on the cannabis. One of the things to study is cannabis.
Yes.
Okay, even now the cannabis. There's two approaches. One approach is suppression because it's a bad thing, and then this other side is maybe it's not really that bad. Maybe it's not as bad as alcohol, and then so it should be more toward regulation to avoid bad consequences from marijuana or maybe other drugs too. And so a little history. We had an emergency ordinance that was taken, which was replaced by a ban, and which of course made everything black market. And now there's going to be a study session to see if there can be a more reasonable approach on the cannabis issue, commercial cannabis. Is that in a nutshell?
Well, people who have followed me at all on that issue know that I support regulation of the cannabis industry.
Okay.
I, with a few other people, were proponents of Measure D, which supported regulation of cannabis.
Right.
You know, the urgency ordinance wasn't perfect. Measure D wasn't perfect. Times have changed. They change daily on this topic.
Yeah.
Commercial grows must abide by the state of California rules.
Right.
At the time the county was going through whether they should or shouldn't, we were making our own rules.
Right.
We don't have that option anymore. They have to follow state rules, which are quite onerous.
Right.
And as a free market person, you probably think it's too onerous. I mean, I'm not going to get into that, but it's helping us grow through this process of learning about cannabis.
Right.
Where the county comes in is land use. Mm-hmm. What should the parcel size be? Should there be some restrictions?
Like residential?
Yeah, but let's say you have rural residential 20 acres and you have ag 20 acres. What difference is it? You can have a house on ag and you have a house on rural residential.
Right.
I think we all agree it does not belong in your more urban neighborhoods.
Small lot residential.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want it in your... And the board, I don't fault them.
Yeah.
When the urgency ordinance went in, it was a moment in time. The Butte fire just happened. There was a lot of farms. People were coming in, buying land, and people were saying, board, you have to do something. And they did something.
Yeah.
So fast forward, then's then, now's now. I want regulation back. And I want
reasonable
cannabis farm. Well, yes, I do want cannabis farms back in. It helps the local economy in terms of providing jobs. Mm-hmm. And it does give revenue to the county.
All right. Now, looking ahead, we have 30 seconds. How would you? What do you think? What thoughts do you want to leave with our audience? Besides, be happy.
I am very much a steward of Calaveras County. That means I'm a steward of county resources. I'm a steward of the finances, and I'm a steward of land use.
Thank you for being our guest.
Thank you,
It's a pleasure,
Al.
Merita.
As always.
Thank you for watching. See you next time.